The first thing I tasted wasn't blood. It was glitter. Tiny silver pieces from my stage makeup had mixed with the blood pooling in my mouth, creating a bitter metallic taste I would never forget. My body refused to move. The dazzling lights of Aurora Dome blurred into a sea of white stars above me, while thousands of screaming fans slowly became muffled echoes. The song hadn't even ended. I could still hear the instrumental blasting through the speakers. Only, my voice wasn't there anymore. Neither was my heartbeat. Someone stepped over my hand. Designer heels. White. Limited edition. Worth more than my mother's yearly salary. They belonged to Yuna, the center of our girl group, the nation's sweetheart, the girl everyone believed possessed the voice of an angel, the same voice that had actually belonged to me. She glanced down for less than a second. Her perfectly painted lips twisted in annoyance. Oh no. She frowned. My shoes. Not. Call an ambulance. Not. Is she breathing? Just. My shoes are stained. A warm drop of blood rolled across the polished stage floor and touched the tip of her expensive heel. She clicked her tongue. Manager Kong. Her voice was calm. Almost bored. Move her. Behind the curtains, my manager didn't even kneel beside me. He looked toward the live broadcast cameras instead. Keep filming. His cold voice cut through the chaos. The audience came for Eclipse, not for a dying trainee. Dying. Trainee? I wanted to laugh. I had debuted 3 years ago. Recorded every title track. Sang every impossible high note. Spent thousands of hours inside recording booths until my vocal cords bled. Yet even while dying, I was still nothing more than a trainee to them. Because the public never knew. Every famous chorus, every viral bridge, every breathtaking live note, had been my voice. Yuna only opened her mouth. I was the ghost behind the microphone. The invisible singer who made a superstar. Someone finally grabbed my shoulders. Not a doctor. Not a medic. 2 security guards. They dragged my body across the glossy stage like broken equipment, while fireworks exploded overhead. The audience cheered. They thought it was part of the performance. My vision darkened. The last thing I heard wasn't applause. It was Manager Kong whispering to someone backstage. Delete today's backstage footage. A pause. Then. And prepare another trainee. Another trainee. Another ghost. So easy. So replaceable. I wanted to scream. Instead, everything disappeared. Death wasn't peaceful. There was no tunnel of light. No warm embrace. Only silence. Heavy. Infinite. Then, a sharp pain exploded inside my lungs. I gasped violently. Air rushed into my chest. Cold. Real. My eyes flew open. The ceiling above me wasn't the backstage medical room. It was cracked white plaster. A cheap dormitory ceiling. The familiar buzzing of an old fluorescent light echoed overhead. Someone was snoring. Someone else was talking in their sleep. My heartbeat thundered inside my ears. No. Not possible. I sat upright, so quickly my vision spun. The tiny bedroom looked painfully familiar. 4 bunk beds. Cheap wardrobes. Practice uniforms hanging from metal hooks. Protein powder containers stacked beside someone's suitcase. The stale smell of hairspray, instant noodles, and exhaustion filled the room. No. 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 This room. I hadn't seen it in 3 years. My trembling hands reached toward the bedside table. My phone. Please. Please. The lock screen lit up. August 3rd. Exactly. 30 days before Eclipse's debut showcase. The phone slipped from my fingers. It landed softly on the mattress. 30 days. I had gone back. 30 days. I staggered toward the tiny bathroom mirror. The girl staring back at me looked 18. Her cheeks were hollow. Dark circles framed tired eyes. Her collarbones protruded sharply beneath oversized pajamas. She looked fragile, like a bird with broken wings. I remembered this girl. She still believed hard work was enough. She still believed talent would eventually be rewarded. She still trusted Manager Kong. She still admired Yuna. She still thought the company president cared about his artists. She still believed dreams came true. I slowly reached toward the mirror. My fingertips touched cold glass. I remember. I whispered. Everything. The endless starvation diets. The 16-hour rehearsals. The secret recordings. The lies. The stolen songs. The fake smiles. The contracts. The betrayal. The ambulance that never came. My reflection stared back silently. Then, a laugh escaped my lips. Soft at first. Then louder. And louder. Until tears streamed down my face. If anyone had walked into the bathroom, they would have thought I'd completely lost my mind. Maybe I had. Because the girl who died on that stage would never exist again. Someone knocked on the bathroom door. Arya. A sleepy voice yawned. Hurry up. We have dance practice in 20 minutes. Dance practice. The beginning of hell. I wiped my tears away. No. The word slipped out before I could stop it. Outside. Silence. What? I said. I smiled for the first time in years. I'm not going. Another long silence. Then laughter. Stop joking. The manager will kill you. I stared into the mirror. The girl staring back looked completely different now. Not because her appearance had changed. Because her eyes had. Last time. They were filled with fear. This time. They held something much more dangerous. Memory. And revenge. Manager Kong thought he could replace me. Yuna thought my voice belonged to her. Aurora Entertainment thought I would spend 7 years singing from the shadows. They were wrong. Because this time, I wasn't going to survive inside their cage. I was going to burn it down. And when their glittering empire finally collapsed, the whole world would discover one unforgettable truth. The angel everyone worshipped had never learned how to sing. Morning arrived exactly the way nightmares did. Not with peace. With pounding. Bang. 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 Someone slammed a fist against the dorm room door hard enough to shake the cheap wooden frame. Everyone in the practice room in 5 minutes. Manager Kong. His voice was as cold as I remembered. Not loud. Not angry. Just controlled enough to make everyone panic. The room erupted into chaos. Blankets flew off beds. Girls rushed toward the bathroom. Hair straighteners clicked on. Protein shakes were gulped down without tasting them. I didn't move. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed and watched. 3 years ago, I had been the first one standing. I would have apologized even before being scolded. I would have skipped breakfast. Skipped water. Skipped breathing if the company asked. Now, I simply watched. Minji, the youngest trainee, noticed me first. Arya. She blinked. Why aren't you getting ready? I looked at her carefully. In my previous life, Minji had disappeared 6 months after debut. Officially, she left due to health issues. Unofficially, she had collapsed from severe malnutrition. The company paid her family to stay quiet. She never sang again. The memory tightened my chest. This time, maybe I could save more than myself. I'm hungry, I said. Minji stared. What? I'm going to eat breakfast. She laughed nervously. Today's weigh-in. I know. You'll get punished. I know. Her smile faded. Are you okay? I smiled. No. I finally woke up. The company cafeteria smelled like burnt toast and boiled eggs. Not because anyone actually got to eat them. The food was for executives. Trainees received something different. Half an apple. A paper cup of black coffee. 2 almonds. That was breakfast. A laminated nutrition chart hung proudly on the wall. Target BMI. 17.5. I remembered staring at that chart every morning, believing it, thinking thinner meant prettier, thinking prettier meant success, thinking success meant happiness. I walked past the tray of apple slices, past the coffee, past the almonds. Instead, I opened the staff refrigerator. Cold air rushed over my face. Inside sat real food: rice, chicken, vegetables, milk, fruit. Food meant for people. Without asking permission, I grabbed a lunchbox. The cafeteria fell silent. A stylist dropped her clipboard. One of the vocal coaches actually stood up. "Aria, what are you doing?" "Eating." I peeled open the lid. Steam drifted upward. My stomach growled so loudly several people heard it. I took the first bite. Warm rice. Soft chicken. Actual flavor. For 3 years, I had forgotten what real food tasted like. Someone snatched the lunchbox from my hands. Manager Kong. His face had gone pale with rage. "What do you think you're doing?" "Eating breakfast. That meal is for executives. I'm an artist. You're a trainee. I sing every guide track. I record every demo. I've written 2 of our debut songs." So, I met his eyes. When exactly do I become important enough to eat? The cafeteria became so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. Manager Kong leaned closer. "So that's how it's going to be." His voice dropped. "You've become difficult." "No, I've become awake." Practice room 3. Mirrors stretched from wall to wall. Bright white lights exposed every flaw. Every trainee hated this room, because this was where dreams were measured. Not by talent, by obedience. The choreographer clapped once. Again. Music exploded from the speakers. 5 girls moved in perfect synchronization. I moved with them. Not because I wanted to, because muscle memory refused to forget. 3 years of endless practice had carved every movement into my body. Spin, step, turn, smile. Even fake happiness had become choreography. The music stopped. The choreographer pointed at Yuna. "Perfect." Then she looked at me. "Aria, you need to smile more." I almost laughed. In my previous life, those exact words echoed every single day. Smile more. Lose more weight. Sing softer. Stand farther back. Make Yuna look better. Never outshine the center. Never receive too much attention. Never become visible. Today, I finally asked the question I should have asked years ago. Why? The room froze. The choreographer frowned. What? Why should I smile if the song is about betrayal? She blinked. Because audiences like smiling idols. Then why write sad songs? Silence. The assistant choreographer looked away. Even she knew. The songs weren't written to tell stories. They were written to sell merchandise. Manager Kong stepped onto the practice floor. "We'll discuss your attitude later." "I'd rather discuss the contract." His expression changed. Only slightly. But I saw it. Fear. Small. Hidden. Real. The contract. Yes. The debut contract. The one we're signing next month. He folded his arms. What about it? I'd like to read every page. He laughed. You don't need to. Our legal team already reviewed everything. I didn't ask what your legal team thought. I asked for my copy. The dancers stopped pretending not to listen. The vocal coach slowly lowered her clipboard. Manager Kong smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the kind predators wore before attacking. You've changed. So have you. I just noticed. That afternoon, a thick envelope landed on my practice room chair. Debut artist agreement. 7 years. 94 pages. Last time, I never read it. I signed wherever they pointed. This time, I carried it back to the dorm, locked my bedroom door, and began reading. Page 12. The company owned my stage name. Page 21. The company owned every recording. Page 33. The company owned every song written during the contract. Page 48. The company could replace my recorded vocals with another member's performance at its sole discretion. I stopped breathing. There it was, hidden inside legal language. Exactly how they stole my voice. Not illegal, because I had signed permission. Page 62. Medical decisions required company approval. My fingers tightened around the paper. That was why no ambulance came. The contract gave them control, even over my body. By the time I reached the final page, the sun had disappeared. Outside, Seoul shimmered beneath thousands of city lights. Inside, something inside me had frozen completely. There was no misunderstanding, no accident, no unfortunate circumstance. Everything had been planned. Not my death, but my replacement. I had never been chosen to become a star. I had been recruited to become a voice. Disposable, invisible, replaceable. A knock interrupted my thoughts. 3 soft taps. Not Manager Kong. Not Yuna. Someone else. I opened the door. Minji stood there holding a convenience store sandwich. She looked embarrassed. I thought you might still be hungry. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then I accepted the sandwich. It felt surprisingly heavy. Not because of the bread. Because no one had ever offered me kindness inside Aurora Entertainment. I smiled. A real one. Thank you. Minji hesitated. Arya, do you think we'll really debut? I looked past her toward the brightly lit practice rooms. Toward the hallway where countless dreams had already died. Then I looked back at the innocent girl standing in front of me. This time, I wouldn't lie. Some of us will. And some of us will finally be free. Minji frowned, clearly not understanding. She didn't have to. Not yet. Because tomorrow, everything would change. I folded the contract, placed it carefully inside my backpack, and for the first time since waking up, I made a concrete decision. I wasn't going to wait until debut. I wasn't going to expose them after they betrayed me. I wasn't even going to give them the chance. Tomorrow morning, before anyone else arrived, I would walk into the CEO's office, put the unsigned contract on his desk, look him straight in the eyes, and quit. The Empire believed it had already won. It had no idea. The headquarters of Aurora Entertainment looked beautiful from the outside. That was its greatest talent. 40 floors of polished glass reflected the morning sunrise like a monument to dreams. Every week, hundreds of teenagers lined up outside those front doors hoping to become the next superstar. If only they knew. Dreams weren't created inside this building. They were harvested, then sold. I stood across the street, holding the unsigned contract inside my backpack. The morning air was cool. Traffic hummed through downtown Seoul. Employees hurried into the building with coffee cups in their hands. 3 years ago, I would have looked at this tower with admiration. Today, it looked like a prison. I crossed the street. The revolving glass doors slid open. Good morning, Miss Arya. The security guard smiled politely. I smiled back. He had always been kind. In my previous life, he secretly gave trainees bottled water during summer, because management refused to provide any. His name was Mr. Choi, one of the few genuinely decent people in the company. Good morning. You look nervous. I've got an important meeting. He laughed. Well, good luck. I nodded. I was going to need much more than luck. The executive floor was eerily quiet. Cream-colored marble stretched beneath my shoes. Expensive paintings decorated the walls. Fresh flowers stood beside every office. Everything smelled of wealth. None of it belonged to the artists who earned it. Outside the CEO's office sat his assistant. Mrs. Han. Perfect posture. Perfect makeup. Perfect smile. The smile disappeared when she saw me. Arya. The CEO isn't available. I'll wait. He has board members inside. I'll wait. She sighed. You trainees are becoming bolder every year. She returned to her computer. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 15. Voices echoed behind the heavy oak doors. Someone inside laughed loudly. Another voice mentioned overseas investors. Money. Always money. Finally, the office doors opened. 6 executives stepped out wearing tailored suits. They barely noticed me. To them, I wasn't a person. Just another product. The last man to leave was President Lee, founder of Aurora Entertainment. The face that appeared in magazines beside headlines about nurturing young talent. He looked exactly as I remembered. Silver hair. Expensive watch. Warm smile. Eyes as cold as winter. Mrs. Han immediately stood. Sir. He nodded before noticing me. Oh. Arya. He smiled kindly. What brings you here so early? The performance deserved an award. Anyone watching would believe he cared. I'd like 5 minutes. He checked his watch. You have 3. His office overlooked the Han River. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the room in morning sunlight. Awards covered one wall. Gold records. Platinum albums. Photographs with world-famous idols. Not one picture included the trainees who had failed. Or disappeared. President Lee gestured toward the chair. Sit. I'll stand. As you wish. He folded his hands. So, what's troubling my future star? Future star. I almost laughed. 3 years from now. He wouldn't even remember my birthday. I removed the thick contract from my backpack. Placed it carefully on his polished desk. Unsigned. His smile faded. What is this? My answer. He opened the first page. His eyes immediately found the blank signature line. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. He closed the folder. I see. You haven't signed. No. Did someone advise you against it? No. Your parents? No. A lawyer? No. Then why? I looked directly into his eyes. Because I don't intend to become your property. For the first time. His expression cracked. Only for a second. Then the charming smile returned. You misunderstand. We're offering you an opportunity. No. You're buying ownership. He leaned back in his chair. You've been reading. Every page. He nodded slowly. That's unexpected. I found several interesting clauses. They're standard. Medical control? Standard. Ownership of my voice? Standard. Replacing my vocals without permission? His fingers stopped tapping the desk. Standard. The word came slower this time. Interesting. I smiled. So if they're standard, you won't mind removing them. He chuckled. You really are young. No. I'm finally paying attention. President Lee stood. He walked toward the windows overlooking the city. You know, when I started this company, I had nothing. I built Aurora from a tiny basement studio. I've given opportunities to thousands. And only a handful became stars. He turned around. Do you know why? I stayed silent. Because talent isn't enough. Success requires sacrifice. I've already sacrificed enough. His smile disappeared completely. Have you? You've trained for only 4 years. There are girls who would kill to stand where you are. I nearly did. He frowned. What? Nothing. He walked back toward his desk. You have remarkable potential, Arya. I rarely say this. But I personally chose you. No. You chose my voice. His eyes narrowed. I don't understand. You don't have to. He pressed a button beneath his desk. A moment later, Manager Kong entered. He looked annoyed, then confused. "Sir." President Lee slid the contract across the desk. "Apparently, our trainee has concerns." Manager Kong looked at me. "Arya, what are you doing?" "I'm quitting." Silence. Utter silence. Manager Kong actually laughed. Then louder still. Finally he stopped. "Oh. You're serious?" "Yes." He looked toward the CEO. "Permission to speak freely?" President Lee nodded. Manager Kong stepped closer until he stood directly in front of me. "You think you're special?" "No. You think another agency will take you?" "I don't know. You think you're irreplaceable." I smiled. "I know." His face darkened. "You've completely lost your mind." "I found it." He slammed both hands onto the desk. "Do you have any idea how much this company has spent on you?" His voice echoed through the office. 4 years of training. Private vocal coaches. Dance instructors. Housing. Food. Styling. Media training. We invested everything in you." I met his furious stare. "You invested in your future profits." "Don't twist my words. I'm correcting them." President Lee raised one hand. "Kong. Enough." The manager stepped back reluctantly. The CEO looked at me calmly. "What exactly do you want?" "Freedom." "Everyone wants freedom." "No. Most people want comfort." "I don't. I'd rather fail honestly than succeed as someone else's shadow." President Lee opened a drawer. He removed another folder. Much thinner. "I hadn't planned to show you this today." He slid it across the desk. "Read." I opened it. Inside, my debut profile. Center position. Yuna. Main dancer. Hyojin. Lead rapper. Sora. Visual. Yuna. Main vocal. Blank. No name. Instead, one sentence. Vocals may be pre-recorded using alternate personnel if necessary. I stared at the paper. Not shocked. Just confirmed. Exactly as I remembered. There. President Lee smiled. "Happy? You've seen the plan. Now understand. The audience buys faces. They don't buy voices. They'll never know. I will." He sighed. "You really are making a mistake." "Maybe. But it'll be my mistake." Manager Kong suddenly laughed again. This time, it sounded cruel. "You think Yuna needs you?" He smirked. "We've already prepared backup singers. We'll replace every note you ever recorded. You'll disappear. Within a month. No one will remember your name." I slowly zipped my backpack closed. Maybe. In my first life. He had been right. But this wasn't my first life anymore. I looked at both men. "I hope your replacement can hit an F-sharp above high C." Manager Kong frowned. "What?" "And I hope she can sustain it for 9 seconds." Silence. Neither man spoke. Because they both knew. There wasn't another trainee who could. The title track depended on that note. Without it, the entire climax collapsed. "You." Manager Kong whispered. "You planned this." "No. I remembered it." "What?" I smiled. "You'll understand soon." I walked toward the office door. President Lee spoke one final time. "If you leave today, you'll never debut." I turned around. "Not with Aurora." "No. Anywhere. We'll make one phone call. Every label. Every producer. Every broadcaster. You'll never sing professionally." His threat hung in the air. 3 years ago, it would have destroyed me. Today, it almost made me laugh. Because he was thinking like an old industry executive. He believed success lived inside television studios. Inside agencies. Inside contracts. He had no idea what was coming. He had never heard of viral live streams. Independent artists topping global charts. Millions of fans discovering talent online without asking permission from gatekeepers. He still believed he controlled music. The internet was about to prove him wrong. I placed my trainee ID card on his desk. The plastic badge landed beside the unsigned contract. I don't need your stage. I'll build my own. Without waiting for permission, I opened the office door, walked through it, and closed it quietly behind me. No shouting, no tears, no dramatic speech. Just one click. Behind that door, Aurora Entertainment had just lost the one voice holding its billion-one debut together. They simply didn't know it yet. Outside, the elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. As the numbers counted down, 40, 39, 38, my heart pounded. Not from fear, from possibility. When the elevator reached the lobby, sunlight poured through the glass entrance. For the first time in 4 years, no schedule waited for me. No rehearsal, no weigh-in, no manager, no cage. I pushed open the doors. A cool breeze brushed across my face. I inhaled deeply. The air smelled different. Not because the city had changed, because I was finally free. Across the street, a massive digital billboard flashed with Aurora Entertainment's newest slogan, "We create stars." I looked at it for a long moment, then smiled. "No," I whispered. "You create prisoners." Behind me, high above the city, panic was already beginning to spread through the executive floor. By sunset, they would discover that replacing a face was easy. Replacing a once-in-a-generation voice was impossible. For the first time in 4 years, I woke up without an alarm. No manager banging on the dorm door. No schedule taped to the wall. No reminder to lose another kilogram before Friday. Only silence. It was strangely unsettling. Freedom sounded nothing like I had imagined. The tiny studio apartment I rented the previous afternoon barely deserved to be called an apartment. The wallpaper peeled near the ceiling, the bathroom faucet dripped every few seconds, and the refrigerator made an odd rattling noise whenever it turned on. But it was mine. No cameras. No company inspections. No roommates reporting every word I said. No one telling me how much I was allowed to eat. I walked into the kitchenette and opened the refrigerator. Inside sat a carton of milk, a loaf of bread, eggs, and strawberries. Nothing expensive, nothing glamorous. Yet I smiled. In my previous life, eating strawberries was considered cheating. Today, I ate 5. At exactly 8 a.m., Aurora Entertainment gathered inside Studio 1, the largest recording room in the building. Manager Kong stood behind the glass control booth checking his watch. "Where is she?" One assistant swallowed nervously. "Sir, Arya resigned yesterday." "I know that. I mean the replacement." The assistant hesitated. "She hasn't arrived." Manager Kong looked toward the producer. "Start with Yuna." Inside the recording booth, Yuna adjusted her expensive headphones. She smiled confidently. "Don't worry. I've practiced all night." Manager Kong forced a smile. "Good. Let's record." The producer pressed the talkback button. "Take 1." The instrumental began. Soft piano. Electronic drums. The opening verse. Yuna sang beautifully. Sweet. Gentle. Perfectly acceptable. Then, the chorus approached. Everyone inside the control room unconsciously straightened. This was the part. The bridge that transformed an ordinary song into something unforgettable. The bridge Arya had written. The bridge Arya had always recorded. Yuna inhaled deeply. She opened her mouth. The note came out. Thin. Weak. Flat. The producer immediately stopped the recording. Again. Take 2. The note cracked. Take 5. She reached for it. Missed. Take 9. Her voice disappeared halfway through. Take 14. Silence. Yuna pulled off her headphones. I'm tired. Manager Kong rubbed his temples. We're running out of time. I know. My throat hurts. The vocal coach cleared his throat carefully. Sir. What? The note may be. He hesitated. Too high. Manager Kong glared at him. Arya sang it. The coach nodded. Yes. She did. Another uncomfortable silence filled the room. Everyone finally admitted something they had avoided saying for years. Arya wasn't simply talented. She was exceptional. At noon, President Lee entered Studio 1. Progress. Nobody answered. The producer looked away. The vocal coach suddenly found his clipboard fascinating. Finally, Manager Kong spoke. We're still adjusting. President Lee noticed the untouched progress chart hanging on the wall. Not one completed section. His expression hardened. Show me. The producer reluctantly pressed play. The original demo began. Arya's voice. Powerful. Controlled. Effortless. It filled the studio with emotion. The producer switched to Yuna's latest recording. The difference was immediate. Not terrible. Not embarrassing. Just ordinary. President Lee slowly turned toward Manager Kong. How many days until teaser release? 26. And you still don't have a usable chorus? No. President Lee spoke quietly. So, find another singer. The search began immediately. Aurora called every vocal coach they knew. Former trainees. Session singers. University music students. Even musical theater performers. One after another. They entered Studio 1. One after another. They failed. Some reached the note, but lacked emotion. Others had beautiful tone, but insufficient range. A few managed the bridge once. Never twice. By evening, the producer finally removed his headphones. I've heard 43 singers today. Manager Kong looked exhausted. And the producer sighed. There isn't another Arya. Meanwhile, I had no idea. Instead, I was standing behind the counter of a small neighborhood cafe. The owner looked at my resume. You've never worked before? I wasn't allowed to. He raised an eyebrow. Interesting answer. When can you start? Today. He laughed. I like that. Aprons over there. The cafe wasn't glamorous, but it smelled wonderful. Fresh coffee. Warm pastries. Vanilla. Customers actually smiled. Some thanked me when I served them. Nobody shouted. Nobody criticized my weight. Nobody measured my waist. It felt normal. I almost cried. Around 4 o'clock, the bell above the cafe door chimed. A man wearing a black baseball cap entered carrying a guitar case. He looked to be in his late 20s. Messy hair. Round glasses. Worn leather jacket. He ordered an Americano. No sugar. While preparing his coffee, I quietly hummed to myself. An old melody. One I had written during trainee days. I froze. I shouldn't be singing it. Not here. Not now. The customer looked up. That song. I stopped. What about it? You wrote it. I smiled politely. No. Just something I remembered. He continued watching me. His expression changed. Not recognition. Curiosity. Professional curiosity. You have good control. Pardon. You're breathing. Most people hum from the throat. You don't. I slid his coffee across the counter. Thank you. He accepted it. I'm Ethan. I nodded. Arya. You sing professionally? Not anymore. He laughed softly. Those are usually the people who sing the best. Before leaving, he placed a business card on the counter. Ethan Park. Independent music producer. If you ever change your mind. He smiled. Call me. Then he left. I stared at the card for several seconds. Independent producer. Not agency. Not entertainment company. Interesting. I slipped it into my apron pocket. At that exact moment, across the city, Manager Kong slammed his fist against the recording studio wall. 26 takes. 0 usable recordings. The producer finally removed his headphones. I have one suggestion. Manager Kong looked up. What? The producer swallowed. Bring Arya back. Silence. President Lee slowly folded his hands. No. Manager Kong frowned. Sir. I said no. But she's the only. I know exactly what she is. The CEO walked toward the studio window overlooking the empty vocal booth. Then he smiled. Coldly. If she thinks leaving this company means freedom, let's remind her how small the world really is. He picked up his phone. Start making calls. Every agency. Every broadcaster. Every producer. I want one message delivered. His smile widened. No one hires Arya. Not even by accident. As darkness settled over Seoul, I finished my first shift. The cafe owner handed me a small envelope. Your wages. I opened it. It wasn't much. But they were the first honest earnings of my life. No contracts. No deductions. No hidden conditions. Just money I had earned. Walking home beneath the city lights, I looked up at the stars barely visible between the skyscrapers. For the first time, I felt hope. What I didn't know was that somewhere in the city, my name had already become the subject of dozens of phone calls. Doors I had never even knocked on were quietly being closed. Aurora Entertainment wasn't trying to win me back anymore. They were trying to erase me. They believed they were destroying my future. Instead, they were pushing me toward the one path they could never control. And in less than a week, a single anonymous upload would begin the downfall of everything they had built. 3 days. That was how long freedom remained quiet. By the 4th morning, the silence was over. I had just finished arranging fresh pastries in the display case when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I ignored it. 5 seconds later, another call. Then another. Then another. 6 missed calls in less than 2 minutes. The cafe owner glanced at me. Popular. I forced a smile. I don't think so. The phone buzzed again. This time, a text message. Aurora Entertainment has informed us not to contact you regarding future opportunities. Another message appeared. We're sorry, but your audition has been cancelled. Then another. After careful consideration, we've decided not to proceed. I frowned. I had never applied anywhere. How were they rejecting me before I had even knocked on the door? Then I remembered President Lee's final words. No one hires Arya. He hadn't been bluffing. That evening, I counted the money inside my wallet. After rent, utilities, groceries, and transportation, I had enough savings to survive. 24 days. After that, nothing. I leaned back in the tiny chair beside my apartment window. Outside, rain tapped gently against the glass. The city looked beautiful from a distance. Cold, busy, unreachable. My gaze drifted toward the guitar resting against the wall. It had been gathering dust for years. Aurora had forbidden trainees from writing their own music. Company songs sell. Personal songs don't. Funny. Most of the songs that made the company famous had started as personal songs. Mine. I reached for the guitar. The wood felt familiar beneath my fingertips. Comforting. Like greeting an old friend. I strummed one chord. Then another. The melody came back almost immediately. Not the debut song. Not the one Aurora stole. Something older. Something I had written when I was 16. Before contracts. Before diets. Before fear. Back when music still belonged to me. The next afternoon, the cafe bell chimed. Americano. No sugar. I smiled without looking up. Ethan. The usual? The usual. The independent producer laughed. I see you remember. You left a good tip. I'll take the compliment. He sat near the window, placing a laptop and a notebook on the table. For almost an hour, he simply worked. No small talk. No questions. Just coffee. As he prepared to leave, he stopped beside the counter. I heard you singing again yesterday. I froze. I wasn't singing. You forgot the kitchen door was open. Embarrassing. Very embarrassing. I didn't mean to listen. He smiled apologetically. But... He hesitated. You're wasting your voice serving coffee. I looked away. My previous employer disagreed. I'm not your previous employer. No, you're not. He reached into his backpack and removed a small portable audio recorder, the kind street musicians often used. Do me a favor. What? Sing one song. I don't perform anymore. I'm not asking you to perform. I'm asking you to remember. He placed the recorder on the counter. No cameras. No audience. No contract. Just one song. I stared at the recorder. My fingers tightened around the dish towel. The last time I had stood in front of a microphone, I died. The memory hit without warning. The blinding stage lights. The blood. Yuna's shoes. Manager Kang's voice. Move her. My breathing became uneven. Ethan noticed immediately. You don't have to. He gently picked up the recorder. I'm sorry. I surprised both of us. Wait. He stopped. I took a slow breath, closed my eyes, and began to sing. Softly, barely above a whisper. The first verse floated through the empty cafe. No background music. No auto-tune. No expensive studio. Just one voice. One guitar. One forgotten dream. When I finished, the silence lasted almost 10 seconds. I opened my eyes. Ethan hadn't moved. He simply stared. Finally, he spoke. Do you know what your biggest problem is? I blinked. My problem? You've spent years trying to sound perfect. He shook his head. But perfection isn't what people remember. They remember honesty. He handed me the recorder. Listen. I pressed play. My own voice filled the room. There were tiny imperfections. A shaky breath. A faint crack during one note. 4 years. Aurora would have erased those. Ethan smiled. That's the part people believe. That night, I couldn't sleep. The recording kept replaying in my mind. Not because it was flawless. Because it wasn't. It sounded human. I opened my laptop. Created a brand new email address. A brand new username. No photographs. No biography. No links. Just one word. Echo. No one would search for Echo. No one would connect it to Aria. No one would care. Which was exactly what I wanted. I uploaded the recording. Title: If Tomorrow Never Comes. Acoustic demo. No hashtags. No promotion. No profile picture. Just upload. The progress bar slowly reached 100%. I hovered over the publish button. A strange fear settled in my chest. This wasn't fear of failure. It was fear of being heard. What if nobody listened? What if somebody did? After nearly a full minute, I clicked. Published. The next morning, nothing happened. 23 views. Most were probably accidents. One comment. Nice voice. Another. Pretty song. That was all. I smiled anyway. Those 2 comments meant more than millions of fake compliments arranged by Aurora's marketing department. Real people. Real opinions. Real listeners. Meanwhile, inside Aurora Entertainment, the atmosphere had become unbearable. Manager Kong hadn't slept in 48 hours. The teaser deadline was approaching. The title track still wasn't finished. The recording booth had become a battlefield. Yuna's confidence was disappearing. We've tried 38 versions. She rubbed her sore throat. I can't sing it. The producer nodded quietly. I know. Silence. President Lee entered the control room. Status. Nobody answered. Finally, the producer pressed play. A heavily edited version of the chorus echoed through the speakers. Layer upon layer of vocal processing attempted to hide reality. President Lee listened for less than 30 seconds. Then, he stopped the playback. It sounds fake. It is. The producer answered honestly. If we release this. He hesitated. People will notice. Manager Kong slammed a folder onto the table. Then what do you suggest? The producer met his eyes. I've suggested it 3 times already. Bring Arya back. Across town. I was wiping tables after closing. My phone vibrated. A notification. Echo. Views. 1,247. I blinked. That couldn't be right. Yesterday, it had barely reached 20. I opened the video. Someone with nearly 500,000 followers had shared it overnight. Their caption was simple. Found this unknown singer. Why is nobody talking about her? The comments were multiplying every second. This deserves millions of views. That chorus gave me chills. Who is Echo? I've replayed this 6 times. Please upload more. I stared at the screen in disbelief. The numbers kept climbing. 1,400, 1,700, 2,000. I looked around the empty cafe. No reporters. No managers. No contracts. Just me. A phone. And people who liked a song simply because it moved them. No expensive marketing campaign. No celebrity endorsements. No carefully manufactured image. Just music. For the first time in my life, someone was listening to my voice. Not because a company told them to, but because they chose to. I smiled. A small smile. The kind that comes from hope rather than victory. What I didn't know was that 2 floors above Aurora Entertainment's recording studio, an intern had just opened the same anonymous video. He listened once. Then twice. Then rushed toward Manager Kang's office with his laptop in shaking hands. Because the mysterious singer called Echo sounded terrifyingly familiar. And within the next 24 hours, the company that had tried to erase Arya's voice would realize it had become impossible to silence. The first person inside Aurora Entertainment to recognize my voice wasn't a producer, wasn't the CEO, wasn't even Manager Kong. It was an unpaid intern. His name was Jiho. 22 years old. Music production major. Dreamed of composing film scores. Instead, he spent most of his days organizing session files and labeling recording folders no one else wanted to touch. It was almost midnight when he finally finished cleaning Studio One. As he packed his backpack, his phone buzzed. A friend had sent him a link. Dude, listen to this unknown singer. She's incredible. Jiho sighed. Everyone on social media claimed to have discovered the next superstar. Still, he tapped the link. The screen displayed a black background. One word. Echo. He pressed play. The first guitar chord echoed through his earbuds. Then, a voice. His eyes widened. He had heard that voice hundreds of times. Not on television. Not on stage. Inside this very building. Inside recording booth 3. Recording guide tracks. Recording demos. Recording songs that were later credited to someone else. He replayed the video. Then again. There was no doubt. He grabbed his laptop and ran. Manager Kong was still inside his office. His tie hung loose around his neck. Empty coffee cups covered the desk. What? He snapped as Jiho burst inside. Sir, you need to hear this. I'm busy. It concerns the title track. That caught his attention. Jiho placed the laptop on the desk, pressed play. The room filled with my voice. Manager Kong didn't blink. He listened to the entire recording without interrupting. When it ended, he asked only one question. Where did you get this? It was uploaded yesterday. By who? An anonymous account. Manager Kong stared at the screen, then reached for his phone. Call President Lee. By 9 the next morning, Aurora Entertainment's executive conference room was full. President Lee, Manager Kong, the legal department, marketing, public relations, even the company's chief financial officer. The laptop sat in the middle of the table. President Lee pressed play. Nobody spoke while the song played. When it ended, the legal director adjusted his glasses. Is that? Manager Kong answered. Yes. President Lee folded his hands. She's already attracting attention. The marketing director opened a report. The account gained 12,000 followers overnight. Without advertising. Without promotion. President Lee's expression darkened. How many views? 48,000. Comments? Mostly positive. He paused. There are already reaction videos. Silence. Finally, President Lee looked toward the legal team. Can we remove it? The lawyer shook his head. Not immediately. The melody isn't one of ours. The lyrics aren't registered. The recording wasn't made inside company property. In other words, he hesitated. We have no legal claim. The room grew colder. Meanwhile, I knew none of this. Life had become pleasantly ordinary. I worked mornings at the cafe. Evenings, I wrote songs. Not because anyone asked me to. Because I wanted to. For the first time, writing didn't feel like work. It felt like breathing. Each lyric carried pieces of the girl I used to be. Each melody reminded me that my voice had survived, even if my old life hadn't. Business at the cafe was slow that afternoon. Only 3 customers occupied the tables. I was wiping the espresso machine when Ethan walked in. He held his phone in the air. You've been busy. I frowned. What do you mean? He placed the phone on the counter. It displayed my anonymous channel. 102,418 views. I blinked. What? You didn't know? I grabbed the phone. The numbers kept refreshing. Comments flooded the screen faster than I could read them. Please upload another song. This voice deserves a record deal. Echo is better than most idols. I've listened 10 times already. One comment caught my attention. Whoever you are, thank you for making me cry. I stared at those words. Not because they praised me. Because they were honest. Aurora had spent millions trying to manufacture emotional reactions. One simple recording had done it naturally. Ethan smiled. I told you. People remember honesty. That evening, he invited me somewhere unexpected. A small recording studio hidden beneath an old bookstore. It wasn't glamorous. The walls were covered in mismatched acoustic panels. Cables ran across the floor. The mixing console looked nearly 10 years old. But everything was clean, organized, loved. This is where I work. He switched on the lights. I can't afford a luxury studio. I slowly walked around the room. A piano occupied one corner. 3 guitars hung on the wall. A microphone stood inside a modest vocal booth. Unlike Aurora's million-dollar facilities, this place felt warm. Want to try it? Ethan asked. I looked at the microphone. A familiar fear returned. He noticed. You don't have to record. Just stand there. Curious. I stepped into the booth. He closed the glass door. No pressure. No countdown. No manager shouting through the headphones. Only silence. Comfortable silence. Ethan spoke through the talkback microphone. When you're ready, sing anything. I closed my eyes. Then, instead of singing one of my old songs, I began writing a new one. The melody came first. Gentle, hopeful. Then the words. You buried my name beneath your lights, but the stars remembered anyway. When I finished, neither of us spoke. Finally, Ethan smiled. That wasn't a demo. It wasn't. No. That. He pointed toward the microphone. Was an artist finding her sound. Across the city, Aurora's problems continued multiplying. The teaser for Eclipse's debut was scheduled to release in 72 hours. The title track remained unfinished. Yuna hadn't slept properly in days. Her vocal coach handed her warm tea. You should rest. I can't. If I don't record today. She looked toward the glass booth. They'll replace me. The irony was almost cruel. 4 years. She had stood in the spotlight using someone else's voice. Now, she feared becoming replaceable herself. Manager Kong entered. One more take. Yuna nodded weakly. The music began. She reached the bridge. Pushed harder than ever before. Her voice cracked. Pain shot across her face. She removed the headphones immediately. I can't. The producer sighed. I think we've reached today's limit. Manager Kong looked ready to explode. No. We keep going. The vocal coach stepped forward. Sir, if she continues, she could permanently damage her vocal cords. The room fell silent. Manager Kong clenched his jaw. For the first time, he understood the truth he had spent years denying. Talent couldn't be manufactured. It couldn't be bought. And it certainly couldn't be replaced on command. That same night, I uploaded my second song. No announcement. No countdown. No marketing campaign. Just another simple title. Stars Remember. I set my phone aside. Made tea. Opened a book. An hour later, my phone began vibrating continuously. Messages. Notifications. Shares. Comments. I picked it up. The video had already surpassed the first one. Someone famous had shared it. Not an idol. Not an influencer. One of Korea's most respected singer-songwriters. His caption contained only one sentence. The industry has been searching for authenticity. Here it is. Within minutes, music forums exploded. Reaction channels uploaded analysis videos. Fans began comparing Echo's voice to current idols. One comment appeared again, and again, and again. She sounds strangely familiar. I felt a chill. It was only a matter of time. Someone, somewhere, would connect Echo to Aria. And when that happened, Aurora Entertainment wouldn't just lose an artist. It would lose the biggest secret it had spent years protecting. Because if the world discovered whose voice had really carried Eclipse's songs, no amount of money, no amount of lawyers, and no amount of lies would save the empire from collapsing. 3 days after my second song was uploaded, someone knocked on my apartment door. It was exactly 7:30 in the morning. Too early for neighbors. Too formal for friends. I looked through the peephole. A man in a charcoal gray suit stood in the hallway. He carried a black leather briefcase. Behind him waited another man holding a tablet. No smiles. No introductions. Corporate. I already knew who had sent them. I don't think we're expecting visitors. The suited man spoke calmly. Miss Aria? I'd like 5 minutes. I don't. He maintained the same polite expression. This concerns Aurora Entertainment. I figured. We'd prefer not to discuss this in the hallway. I'd prefer not to discuss it at all. He glanced around the corridor before lowering his voice. President Lee asked us to make you a generous offer. I almost laughed. 3 weeks ago. I wasn't worth saving. Now, I was suddenly valuable again. Funny how desperation changes people's opinions. I opened the door just enough to step outside before closing it behind me. If this is about returning, it isn't. He opened the briefcase. Inside was a thick folder. No contract. Not this time. A proposal. He handed it to me. The first page caught my attention immediately. Exclusive artist amendment. The second page listed numbers. A signing bonus. A higher percentage of royalties. A solo debut. A larger apartment. A private vocal coach. Even creative input on future albums. On paper, it looked like everything I'd ever wanted. The representative smiled confidently. President Lee understands there were misunderstandings. He's prepared to move forward. I slowly closed the folder. What changed? He blinked. I'm sorry. 3 weeks ago, I wasn't good enough. Now I suddenly deserve all this. What changed? Neither representative answered. Because we all knew. It wasn't me. It was the internet. I handed the folder back. I'm not interested. The representative didn't move. Perhaps you should finish reading. I already have. You haven't reached the final page. Curious. I reopened the proposal. The last page contained a single condition. All recordings published under the alias Echo must be removed immediately. There it was. The real reason they had come. Not because they believed in me. Because they feared Echo. I looked up. So, you don't actually want Arya. You want silence. The representative remained composed. We're protecting the company's intellectual property. No. You're protecting your reputation. He sighed. I think you're misunderstanding President Lee's intentions. I think I understand them perfectly. He tried a different approach. Miss Arya, you've built momentum. That's impressive. But internet popularity disappears quickly. He folded his hands. Companies provide stability. You'll have television appearances, concerts, advertising, global promotions. Things independent artists simply can't access. His words were carefully chosen. Logical, reasonable, convincing. 3 years ago, they would have worked. Today, they sounded hollow. I have one question. He smiled. Of course. If I return, will my name appear beside every song I sing? Silence. Will the public know my voice is mine? Another silence. Will Yuna step down as center? The representative finally looked away. There are business realities. I nodded slowly. Exactly. I closed the folder once more. You've offered me money. You've offered me fame. You've offered me comfort. But you haven't offered me ownership of my own voice. The second representative finally spoke. You should think carefully. I have. You could be making the biggest mistake of your life. I smiled. No. I already made that mistake once. I won't repeat it. I turned toward my apartment. The first representative called after me. If you reject this, there won't be another offer. Without looking back, I answered. I wasn't waiting for one. The meeting lasted less than 12 minutes. Yet before lunchtime, Aurora Entertainment already knew the outcome. Manager Kong paced furiously inside President Lee's office. She refused. The representative nodded. Without negotiating. No counteroffer. No demands. President Lee remained strangely calm. What exactly did she say? The representative hesitated. She said, "We wanted silence." The room became quiet. Manager Kong slammed his palm against the conference table. I told you we should have brought her back before those videos exploded. President Lee ignored him. Instead, he looked toward the legal director. If we can't buy her, what options remain? The lawyer adjusted his glasses. We have to. Go on. We either destroy her credibility, or destroy Echo. Across the city, I was blissfully unaware. My second upload had crossed 1 million views. 1 million. The number didn't feel real. I refreshed the page 3 times. Still there. A message notification appeared. Not from a company. Not from a journalist. From an ordinary listener. Your music helped me through chemotherapy today. Thank you for reminding me life can still be beautiful. I read the message twice. Then a third time. The view count suddenly became meaningless. This was why I wanted to sing. Not trophies. Not awards. Not magazine covers. To reach someone I would never meet. To make them feel less alone. I quietly replied, "Thank you for listening. Keep fighting." That evening, Ethan invited me to the studio. "I have something to show you." When I arrived, his laptop displayed dozens of articles. Unknown singer Echo reaches 1 million views. Who is Echo? Music critics call Echo the year's biggest discovery. He scrolled further, then stopped. One headline stood out. Aurora Entertainment delays Eclipse debut teaser. I frowned. They delayed it? For the third time. He leaned back. The company claims they're making final improvements. But the industry knows something's wrong. He looked directly at me. They're in trouble. For the first time, I realized my decision hadn't just changed my own future. It had changed theirs too. Late that night, inside Aurora Entertainment, another emergency meeting began. Marketing projected declining pre-orders onto the conference room screen. Sponsors demanded explanations. Investors wanted answers. The pressure inside the company had become unbearable. Then, the public relations director spoke. "I've been monitoring online discussions." President Lee looked up. "And fans keep comparing Echo to Eclipse. So, they're asking why an unknown independent singer sounds stronger than one of the country's most anticipated girl groups." Manager Kong frowned. "They're just comments." "No, they're becoming a narrative." The PR director clicked the remote. The next slide appeared. Thousands of comments. One sentence repeated over and over. "Why doesn't Aurora recruit Echo instead?" President Lee stared at the screen. His expression slowly hardened. "They still don't know who she is." "No, but they're getting curious." Another slide appeared. Audio waveform analysis. Voice comparisons. Reaction videos. Some fans had begun dissecting Echo's singing style. A few had noticed similarities to old trainee clips that had briefly surfaced online years earlier. The distance between Echo and Aria was shrinking. President Lee stood. "No more offers. No more negotiations. If she wants a war." He buttoned his suit jacket. "Then we make sure she never gets the chance to finish her first album." At almost the same moment, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I considered ignoring it. Instead, I answered. "Hello." No response. Only breathing. Then, a woman's voice. Soft. Nervous. "You don't know me. I work at Aurora." My heartbeat slowed. "I'm listening. They're planning something." "What?" "I can't say over the phone." "Who are you?" Silence. Then one final sentence. "They're not trying to bring you back anymore. They're trying to erase you." The call ended. I stared at the dark screen. Outside, rain began falling against the apartment window. Slowly. Steadily. The warning echoed in my mind. For weeks, I had believed I was one step ahead. But if Aurora Entertainment was no longer trying to reclaim me, it meant they had chosen a far more dangerous strategy. Somewhere inside that glittering glass tower, people were already making plans. And this time, they weren't targeting my career. They were coming after the truth itself. The phone call lasted only 14 seconds. But it changed everything. I replayed the woman's final sentence over and over in my mind. They're not trying to bring you back anymore. They're trying to erase you. Outside my apartment, rain drummed steadily against the windows. Inside, sleep never came. At 7 the next morning, Ethan found me sitting in the studio with 3 untouched cups of coffee. You look terrible. I think Aurora is making their move. He stopped smiling. What happened? I told him about the anonymous call. Every word, every pause, every warning. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. So, someone inside the company is helping us. Or setting a trap. He nodded. Either way, we don't ignore it. The call came again that evening. Unknown number. Different voice filter. The same woman. You came back. I wasn't sure you would answer. I almost didn't. I only have 2 minutes. Her breathing sounded rushed. Security checks employee phones now. Who are you? My name doesn't matter. It does to me. It can't. A door slammed somewhere on her end of the line. She lowered her voice. Listen carefully. The company keeps an archive. What kind of archive? Every raw recording. My pulse quickened. Your guide tracks. Your demos. The original vocal sessions. They kept everything. My grip tightened around the phone. If those recordings exist, they prove everything. Exactly. So why are you telling me? A long silence followed. Finally, because my sister trained there before you. I frowned. What? They promised she'd debut. They worked her until she collapsed. Then they replaced her. The woman's voice trembled. She never recovered. The line went quiet for a moment. I couldn't save her. But maybe I can help save you. Before I could ask another question, the call disconnected. For several minutes, neither Ethan nor I spoke. Finally, he broke the silence. If those recordings are real, we don't need opinions. We'd have proof. Exactly. He stood and grabbed a marker. On the whiteboard, he wrote 3 words. The vault. Every company keeps backups. Professional studios never delete master recordings. So where would Aurora store them? He circled the words. If we find the originals. They can't deny anything. Across the city, Aurora Entertainment wasn't sitting still. President Lee stood before a wall-sized screen displaying dozens of news articles. Every headline mentioned Echo. None mentioned Eclipse. He hated that. Marketing. A woman stood. Our teaser engagement is down 32%. Public sentiment? Neutral. Echo. She swallowed. Overwhelmingly positive. President Lee slowly removed his glasses. What about our investigation? Manager Kong answered. We still haven't identified her location. Impossible. We tracked the upload. It came from a public network. A cafe? No. A library. So she planned this. Apparently. President Lee's jaw tightened. He hated losing control. And for the first time in 20 years, he felt as though he was chasing someone instead of leading them. The following afternoon, the cafe owner waved me toward the counter. Package for you. I didn't order anything. No return address. A plain brown envelope. No name. No stamp. Inside, a single USB drive. And a handwritten note. Recording room B. Nothing else. Ethan examined the drive. No label. No logo. You think it's malware? I think someone risked their job to send this. He connected an isolated laptop. Neither of us breathed as the files appeared. Audio. Hundreds of audio files. Folders. Dates. Session numbers. One folder immediately caught my attention. Project Eclipse. Hands trembling. I opened it. Inside were dozens of recordings. Verse 1. Bridge. Harmony. Guide vocal. Demo. My eyes blurred. Every file carried one performer credit. Arya Kim. Not Yuna. Not Eclipse. My real name. Someone inside Aurora had forgotten to erase the metadata. Ethan stared at the screen. Oh. My God. We opened the first recording. The producer's voice echoed through the speakers. Take 12. Arya. Give me more emotion on the second chorus. Then. My voice. Raw. Powerful. Unedited. No backing vocals. No processing. No auto-tune. Just me. At the end of the recording, another voice spoke. Manager Kong. Perfect. We'll swap this with Yuna's visual cut later. Silence filled the studio. Neither Ethan nor I moved. There it was. Not suspicion. Not rumor. Not internet speculation. Evidence. Clear. Undeniable. Legal evidence. Ethan finally whispered. This changes everything. I shook my head. No. It changes nothing. He looked confused. They still have the originals. They'll deny these copies. They'll say they're fake. So what do we do? I looked at the folders. Hundreds of recordings. Years of exploitation. We don't release them. He blinked. What? Not yet. That answer surprised even me. 3 weeks ago, I would have uploaded every file immediately, exposed everyone, burned Aurora to the ground overnight. Now, I realized something. Revenge wasn't enough. If I rushed, Aurora would bury the story beneath lawyers, statements, and public relations. No, I needed something stronger. Timing. The truth had more power when people were already asking questions. And the biggest question in Korea was about to arrive. Eclipse's long-delayed debut showcase. That night, I received one final message from the anonymous employee. No greeting. No signature. Just one sentence. The files I sent are only 10% of what's inside the archive. A second message followed. You haven't seen the contract room yet. Contract room? I frowned. Then a third message appeared. There are names you've never heard before. Artists who disappeared. Songs that were stolen. Careers that never existed. The message ended with 6 words that made my blood run cold. You were never the first victim. I slowly lowered the phone. The room suddenly felt smaller. Heavier. This had never been about one idol group. Or one debut. Or even my stolen voice. Aurora Entertainment had built its empire over decades. How many dreams had disappeared behind those polished glass walls? How many unknown singers had watched someone else accept awards for songs they recorded? How many families had been told their child wasn't good enough, while executives quietly recycled their talent into someone else's success? I looked toward the USB drive resting on the desk. It wasn't just evidence. It was a doorway. And behind that doorway lived an entire history of buried voices waiting to be heard. Somewhere across Seoul, President Lee believed he was still hunting one runaway trainee. He had no idea. The people inside his own company had already started opening the vault from within. The empire wasn't collapsing because of an outsider anymore. It was collapsing because its own foundation had begun to crack. The USB drive sat untouched on my desk. Not because I was afraid of what was inside. Because I finally understood something Aurora Entertainment never had. Truth wasn't powerful simply because it existed. Truth was powerful when the world was ready to hear it. And the world was about to be watching. Monday morning, every entertainment news outlet carried the same headline. Aurora Entertainment confirms Eclipse debut showcase this Friday. After 3 delays, the company had finally committed. President Lee had no choice. Millions of dollars had already been spent. Sponsors were demanding results. Television networks had reserved the broadcast slot. If they postponed again, investors would panic. Aurora wasn't launching a girl group anymore. It was trying to save an empire. Inside Aurora headquarters, no one smiled. Stylists hurried through hallways. Makeup artists rushed between rehearsal rooms. Public relations teams rehearsed interview questions. Every employee could feel it. The pressure. Manager Kong stood in Studio 1 watching Yuna practice the bridge again. She stopped halfway through. "I'm done." "You still have another rehearsal." "I said I'm done." She ripped out her in-ear monitors. "My throat is bleeding." The vocal coach stepped forward. "She needs at least 24 hours of vocal rest." "We don't have 24 hours. Manager Kang's patience snapped. "Then find a way." The room fell silent. Yuna looked at him. For the first time since becoming the center of Eclipse. She wasn't angry. She looked frightened. Quietly, she asked, "What if I can't do it?" Manager Kong didn't answer. Because everyone already knew. Across town, Ethan pushed open the studio door carrying 2 coffees. "You've seen the news?" I nodded. They finally picked a date. He placed the cups on the table. "So, when do we release the recordings?" I looked toward the whiteboard covered in plans. "Not yet." Instead, I picked up my guitar. "We're releasing something else." Ethan frowned. "What?" "A new song." He blinked. "Aurora debuts in 4 days." "Exactly. They'll expect us to attack. So we don't. We remind people why they listened in the first place. Music. Not revenge." He smiled slowly. "I think I'm starting to understand you." The next 3 days disappeared inside the studio. Coffee cups piled up. Lyrics covered every available surface. I rewrote the chorus 17 times. Not because it wasn't good enough. Because it wasn't honest enough. The song wasn't about Aurora. It wasn't about Yuna. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about reclaiming your own voice after spending years believing it belonged to someone else. When we finally finished recording, neither Ethan nor I spoke. He simply pressed save. "This one," he whispered, "changes everything." Thursday evening, 24 hours before Eclipse's debut, we uploaded the song. Title: Unwritten Name. No announcement. No countdown. Just one sentence in the description. For everyone who was told they weren't enough. The internet reacted immediately. Within an hour, reaction channels began uploading videos. Music teachers analyzed the vocals. Fans translated the lyrics into multiple languages. One comment rose to the top. "This doesn't sound like someone seeking revenge. It sounds like someone finally becoming free." I smiled. That was exactly what I wanted them to hear. Meanwhile, Aurora Entertainment was losing control of the conversation. Every promotional post for Eclipse filled with the same replies. "Have you heard Echo's new song? Who is Echo? When is Echo debuting?" Manager Kong slammed his phone onto the conference table. "This is ridiculous." The marketing director looked exhausted. "We're spending millions on advertising. And she's dominating the conversation without spending a single one." President Lee remained calm. Almost too calm. "People lose interest quickly. They'll forget." The legal director quietly interrupted. "Sir, they're not forgetting." He projected a graph onto the screen. Search trends. Eclipse. Flat. Echo. Rising sharply. For the first time, Echo had surpassed Eclipse. President Lee stared at the graph. Then slowly stood. "If tomorrow goes badly." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Everyone in the room understood. Tomorrow wasn't just a debut. It was a trial. Friday. Broadcast day. The entire country seemed to be watching. At the cafe, customers discussed Eclipse while waiting for coffee. At the studio, Ethan connected a television. Even my landlord knocked on the door. "You're watching the debut tonight?" I smiled politely. I might. The truth was, I wasn't interested in seeing them fail. I only wanted confirmation that I had made the right choice. Backstage at Aurora, Yuna adjusted her microphone with trembling hands. Her stylist noticed. "You're shaking." "I'm cold." "It isn't cold." No, it wasn't. Fear simply felt that way. Manager Kong entered. "We're live in 5. The room emptied. Only Yuna remained. She looked at herself in the mirror. The reflection staring back wore designer clothes. Perfect makeup. Diamond earrings. Everything she had dreamed of. Yet, her eyes searched the room for someone who wasn't there. The one person who had always carried the songs she couldn't. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The stage exploded with light. Millions of viewers watched as Eclipse stepped onto the platform. The choreography was flawless. The costumes sparkled. The cameras glided effortlessly. Everything looked perfect. Then came the bridge. Yuna stepped forward. She closed her eyes and sang. This time, she reached the note. Not perfectly, not effortlessly, but she reached it. The audience applauded. The performance ended without disaster. Inside Aurora headquarters, employees cheered in relief. Manager Kong nearly collapsed into his chair. President Lee smiled for the first time in weeks. We survived. But, as the broadcast ended, something unexpected happened. The show's host smiled toward the camera. And before we close tonight, we'd like to congratulate the independent artist currently holding the #1 digital song in Korea. A graphic appeared on screen. Not Eclipse. Not Aurora. Echo. Unwritten name. The audience applauded. The host continued. It's remarkable that an independent artist with no agency has reached #1 this week. We look forward to discovering who Echo really is. For a split second, President Lee's smile disappeared. Because he realized something devastating. Aurora had managed to survive the debut. But they had lost the spotlight. The biggest story of the week wasn't the group they had spent years creating. It was the artist they had thrown away. That night, I stood alone on the rooftop of my apartment building. The city lights stretched endlessly beneath me. My phone vibrated. #1 on digital charts. I stared at the notification for several seconds. 3 years ago, I believed success meant standing under bright stage lights. Tonight, I understood something different. A stage could be taken away. A contract could be broken. A company could blacklist your name. But no one could stop people from choosing to listen. As I looked out over Seoul, another notification arrived. Unknown number. Just one message. Congratulations. Then another. Tomorrow, the board of directors meets. Bring the recordings. I frowned. Before I could reply, a final message appeared. They're about to sacrifice someone to protect the company. The sender never revealed who. But deep inside, I knew. Aurora Entertainment wasn't finished fighting. And the next move would be their most dangerous yet. The board meeting began at 9 a.m. At 9:07, someone lost their job. At 9:12, someone lost their reputation. By lunchtime, an empire had begun turning on itself. None of them realized the real storm hadn't even arrived. My phone vibrated just after sunrise. Another anonymous message. 11:30 a.m. Aurora headquarters. Be across the street. No signature. No explanation. Only a location. Ethan looked up from his laptop. You're actually going? I need to know what's happening. It could be a trap. It probably is. So why risk it? I slipped the USB drive into my jacket pocket. Because whoever keeps helping us is risking far more. At exactly 11:20, we parked across from Aurora Entertainment. The same building I had once believed contained every dream I ever had. Now, It looked different. Television vans crowded the entrance. Reporters stood outside the lobby. Something unusual was happening. Ethan frowned. Why are the media here? I don't know. A notification flashed across my phone. Breaking news. Aurora Entertainment announces emergency press conference. I exchanged a glance with Ethan. This wasn't scheduled. No, it wasn't. Inside Aurora, the atmosphere had turned poisonous. The boardroom doors slammed shut. President Lee stood before 12 directors. No warm smile. No polished speech. Only numbers. The finance director projected a report onto the screen. Our market value has fallen 11%. The Eclipse debut recovered some confidence. But he clicked to the next slide. Echo remains the most discussed artist in the country. Silence. Another director spoke. Advertisers are asking whether Aurora intends to sign Echo. Manager Kong almost laughed. Impossible. Why? President Lee answered calmly. She refused. A murmur spread through the room. One elderly director frowned. You let her leave? It was her decision. Then convince her to return. We tried. And she refused again. The chairman slowly removed his glasses. So, you lost the company's strongest vocalist. You failed to replace her. And now she's outperforming our flagship debut. No one spoke. Because every word was true. Outside, the reporters suddenly became restless. Camera operators adjusted their equipment. Microphones were raised. The front doors opened. Manager Kong stepped outside first. His face looked exhausted. He approached the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Behind him, President Lee appeared. Then something unexpected happened. The chairman of Aurora Entertainment's board walked onto the stage as well. President Lee looked surprised. Very surprised. This hadn't been part of the plan. The chairman cleared his throat. Effective immediately. The board of directors has completed an internal review. President Lee slowly turned toward him. Confusion flashed across his face. The chairman continued. As a result, Mr. Kong, you are relieved of your duties as head of artist management. Gasps erupted among the reporters. Manager Kong froze. What? This decision is final. You can't. The board has already voted. President Lee stepped forward. I wasn't informed of this. You are now, for the first time in 20 years. The company's most feared manager looked powerless. Reporters shouted questions from every direction. Was this related to Eclipse? Did trainees file complaints? Is Aurora facing legal action? No one answered. But the cameras captured everything. Manager Kang's pale face. President Lee's forced composure. The board chairman's cold expression. By evening, those images would spread across every entertainment news channel in Korea. Across the street, I watched in silence. Ethan looked at me. Do you feel satisfied? I expected the answer to be yes. Instead, I surprised myself. No. He frowned. Why not? Because they fired one man. The system that created him is still standing. Just then, another notification appeared. Unknown sender. One image. Nothing else. I opened it. My breath caught. It was a photograph of a locked archive room. A metal door. Keypad entry. Label. Master Recording Vault. Beneath the image, a single message. Tonight. Then another. 11 p.m. North loading entrance. Ethan leaned closer. What is it? I turned the phone toward him. His eyes widened. The vault. I nodded. The originals. He stared at the photograph for several long seconds. If this is real, we only get one chance. Meanwhile, inside Aurora, Manager Kong emptied his office. No farewell party. No thank you speech. Just cardboard boxes. He pulled framed photographs from the shelves one by one. Award ceremonies. Successful debuts. Magazine covers. Years of victories. Then, his office phone rang. He almost ignored it. Instead, he answered. Hello. The caller spoke for less than 30 seconds. Manager Kang's face changed. You've got to be kidding. Another pause. No. They can't know. His grip tightened around the receiver. If anyone opens that vault, we're all finished. The line went dead. Night fell over Seoul. Clouds covered the moon. A cold wind swept through the industrial district behind Aurora Entertainment. At 10:58 p.m., Ethan parked the car 2 streets away. Neither of us spoke. I looked once more at the anonymous message. North loading entrance. 11 p.m. Someone inside Aurora had made a choice. Not to protect the company, but to expose it. The USB drive in my pocket suddenly felt insignificant. If the master recording vault contained what we believed it did, the truth wasn't just about me anymore. It belonged to every forgotten singer, every discarded trainee, every artist whose voice had been hidden behind someone else's smile. I took a slow breath, then stepped out into the cold night. Some doors, once opened, could never be closed again. Tonight, we were about to open one of them. The loading dock behind Aurora Entertainment was almost completely dark. Only a single security light flickered above the metal entrance. 11 p.m. Exactly as the message had instructed. Ethan checked his watch. You still have time to leave. I looked at the steel door. For 4 years, I dreamed of escaping this building. Tonight, I'm walking back inside. Before Ethan could answer, the door clicked. A woman stepped out wearing a black maintenance uniform and a face mask. She looked around carefully before removing her employee badge. I'm Hannah. Her voice matched the anonymous phone calls. You helped me. She shook her head. I couldn't help my sister. At least let me help you. Without another word, she swiped her badge. The heavy vault door unlocked. The room beyond was enormous. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling. Thousands of hard drives. Boxes of master tapes. Labeled folders. Entire careers locked away in silence. Hannah pointed toward one section. Everything after 2012. They kept every original session. My hands trembled. Not from fear. From disbelief. I pulled out one folder. Another. Then another. Each contained names I'd never heard before. Naomi Kim. Seo Yerin. Jisoo Han. Unknown trainees. Unknown singers. Unknown dreamers. Their voices had built famous albums. Their names had vanished. Ethan quietly whispered, "This isn't a company. It's a graveyard." Then, I found my folder. Arya Kim. Inside were hundreds of recordings. Every demo. Every guide track. Every title song. Every vocal take. Every file still carried my original metadata. The evidence was undeniable. But one folder stood apart. It wasn't labeled with a song. It was labeled Board Directive. I opened it. Inside, a recorded meeting. President Lee's voice echoed through the speakers. If Arya becomes more popular than Yuna, we replace her. Manager Kong replied, "What about the contracts? They've already signed. Nobody reads page 62. Laughter filled the recording. Then, the sentence that froze my blood. If another trainee collapses, delay the ambulance until the broadcast ends. The room fell completely silent. Even Ethan stopped breathing. This wasn't exploitation anymore. It was criminal. Hannah looked at me with tears in her eyes. My sister. She collapsed during rehearsals. They waited. My parents thought it was an accident. It wasn't. She handed me another folder. There are 8 more. 8. 8 young artists. 8 families. 8 lives quietly buried beneath success. I closed the folder. This doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to all of them. By sunrise, every major news organization in Korea received the same package. No ransom. No demands. No anonymous threats. Only facts. Original recordings. Contracts. Board meeting audio. Medical reports. Time-stamped studio files. One sentence accompanied every document. Talent deserves truth. Nothing more. The explosion came before breakfast. Every television station interrupted regular programming. News websites crashed. Social media erupted. The story spread beyond Korea within hours. Music critics, former trainees, employees, stylists, producers, one after another. People who had stayed silent for years finally spoke. More victims came forward. More evidence appeared. The wall of lies Aurora Entertainment had built over 2 decades collapsed in less than 48 hours. Police arrived at headquarters before noon. Boxes of documents left the building. Computers were seized. Executives were questioned. Manager Kong was escorted through the front entrance surrounded by cameras. For the first time, he couldn't hide behind security guards. He couldn't shout. He couldn't threaten anyone. He simply lowered his head. President Lee resigned that afternoon. His resignation letter contained only 3 sentences. No apology. No explanation. Just excuses. Nobody believed them. A week later, the board officially dissolved Aurora Entertainment. Every artist's contract became void. The trainees were released. Some signed with other agencies. Others returned to school. Some decided to leave the industry forever. For the first time, they were allowed to choose. 3 months later, the government announced new entertainment industry regulations. Independent medical oversight. Transparent royalty reporting. Mandatory artist legal counseling before contracts. No company could own an artist's recorded voice without explicit, separate consent. The law became known informally online as the Arya Act. I never asked for that, but I accepted it with gratitude. If it protected even one young singer, then everything had been worth it. 6 months later, Ethan and I stood inside a new recording studio. Not luxurious, not enormous, but ours. A small sign hung beside the entrance. Voice House Records. Beneath it, a simple promise. Artists own their art. No hidden clauses. No ghost singers. No stolen credits. Every songwriter, every producer, every vocalist, their names appeared exactly where they belonged. One afternoon, a nervous 16-year-old girl walked into the studio, carrying a worn notebook. She looked terrified. I write songs. I smiled. So do I. They told me my voice wasn't pretty enough. I remember hearing almost those exact words years ago. I gently pushed a microphone toward her. Good. She blinked. What? We're not looking for pretty. We're looking for real. She smiled through tears and began to sing. Exactly 1 year after leaving Aurora, I received an invitation. The National Music Awards. Not to perform, to accept an award. Independent Artist of the Year. I almost declined. Then I noticed the venue. Aurora Dome. The same stage where my first life had ended. Ethan noticed my hesitation. You don't have to. I looked at the invitation for a long time. Then smiled. No, I think I do. The auditorium was full. Thousands of people. Bright lights. Television cameras. Everything looked exactly as it had in my memories. Except, this time, I walked onto the stage alone. No manager. No company. No one standing in front of me. The audience rose to their feet. Not because someone had instructed them to. Because they wanted to. The applause lasted nearly a full minute. I accepted the award, walked to the microphone, and looked out across the sea of faces. For a moment, I remembered the girl who had died here. The girl who believed obedience would earn love. The girl who apologized for existing. She felt very far away now. I smiled. My name is Arya Kim. My voice belongs to me. I hope everyone listening tonight remembers something. No dream is worth surrendering your name. The people who truly deserve your talent will never ask you to disappear. The audience stood again. Not because I had the biggest company. Not because I had the most expensive stage. But because, for the first time, they finally knew whose voice they had been listening to all along. As the ceremony ended, I walked backstage. A young stagehand stopped me. Miss Arya? Yes. I just wanted to say, I started learning music because of your videos. He smiled awkwardly. I don't know if I'll ever become famous. I smiled back. Neither do I. But that's never been the point. He looked confused. The point, I said as I walked toward the exit, is making sure your voice always belongs to you. Outside, the night air was cool. Thousands of stars shimmered above the city. I took one slow breath. Not as a ghost. Not as a replacement. Not as someone else's hidden voice. But simply, as myself. And for the first time in both of my lives, that was more than enough. Some people believed I destroyed Aurora Entertainment. They were wrong. Truth did. A lie can sell millions of albums. It can fill arenas. It can even build an empire. But eventually, every borrowed voice falls silent. Only the real ones endure. If this story stayed with you until the very end, thank you for giving it your time. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were Arya? Would you have exposed the company immediately, or built your own success first? I read your comments, and your ideas often inspire future stories. If you enjoyed this journey of rebirth, revenge, and redemption, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next story. Every week, I bring you brand new original stories filled with shocking betrayals, unexpected plot twists, satisfying revenge, powerful comebacks, billionaire secrets, mafia romances, CEO drama, and second chances that will keep you hooked until the very last minute. Until our next story, remember this. The people who try to silence your voice are often the ones who fear it the most. Protect your dreams. Believe in your worth. And never let anyone convince you that you were born to stand in someone else's shadow. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.